Welcome into Five Things. This is Erik McKinney, joined by Marc Kulkin and Greg Katz. Guys, we're talking USC's 31-16 loss to Notre Dame. And honestly, off the top, I don't know if this is going to be a really long one for us or a really short one. I mean, we're at the point now where it feels like we have hit a lot of these points in previous games. So we're going to get started with our first thing. As always, our player of the game. Greg, go ahead and lead us off.
Well, I think you could have had a tie for USC. You could have had Drake London and Keontae Ingram. But I'm gonna go with Drake. I thought Drake, I think they said he had his career high at receptions against Notre Dame, and I thought that, considering the history of the rivalry, that's something to be said. I thought that Notre Dame would do a better job of defending him, and I don't think they did a bad job. I think he's that good. I'm always err on the side of caution, to say I think he's the best in the country. But honestly speaking, I've seen some of the statistics of the other competitors for the Biletnikoff Award. What he did tonight against Notre Dame, in Notre Dame, fabled Notre Dame Stadium, across the country, people saw him. I can't think of anybody that would be as good, maybe as good, but boy, was he. I thought he was sensational. And he didn't score any touchdowns, but really, I think he made his presence felt. Good for him.
Marc, go ahead. Your player of the game.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Drake London putting up 15 receptions, 170 yards of whatever. So I'll just go with Keontae Ingram. I mean, Erik, we were talking about this after the game. He put up another 130 yards on the ground, and USC's offense is still losing that middle eight. So I'm just going to say Keontae Ingram. He had a great game. He ran hard. I asked him after the game, it seemed like you were one of the few players that you could see the emotion on your face. You kind of took this personally, and he took this loss hard. He wanted this. So I'm going to give him my game ball.
Yeah, those are the two. Yeah, he's one of those, right? It's Keontae or it's Drake. You guys took them and left me with nobody. I'll say Drake London. It's getting tiring to see him put up those stats and not get rewarded for it. I mean, again, he's been able to be held out of the end zone again, and it's like you want him to be able to get touchdowns for him personally, but for the team, you've got to figure out a way where he can have stats and you can still come up with a win. And Greg, you mentioned I thought Notre Dame would do better. You're seeing opposing teams say, no, let him get his, and we know we're going to win. I mean, that if they're going to feed him, it's not going to work down in the red zone, and we're going to be okay, and they're not going to be able to find someone else. USC did find someone else with Keontae Ingram, and still, they finished with 16 points and can't get it done in the red zone. So, again, player of the game, yes, those two guys, big performances out of those two, but the question marks everywhere else. It's just almost as they do better, those question marks other places get bigger and bigger. Marc, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to. Yeah, I actually lost my train of thought. They lost Kyle Hamilton in the first half. Notre Dame's best defender, the person you think is going to take Drake London out of the game, and he gets hurt, and USC can't capitalize on that. It's like, anyways.
Well, let's move to the second thing, and that's the play of the game. Marc, you go ahead and jump in with your play of the game.
Yeah, for me, it's the end of the first half, and it's not really the play of the game; it's the lack of the play of the game. That was Paul Hackett-esque. I can't put it any simpler than that. To get a first down on a running play, and then just to have the Benny Hill type of effect, and not even get lined up for a field goal, not even being able to spike the ball. They had 2 weeks to prepare, and that's what you get. And from there on, it was just, that was the play of the game. That's when you literally lost the game.
And they said some miscommunication. The thought was it was going to be a pass play on that first down, and kind of Keaton took blame for it, and Graham Harrell's coaches take blame for it. And it's all, it's again, there were mistakes made. We need to fix this. And boy, we are careening downhill in the second half of the season, and you're seeing the same things week in, week out. Greg, your second thing, play of the game for you.
Well, I thought the first play of the game was Mark's beanie. I thought that was when he put that beanie on. I said to myself, now that he's coming to right tonight. I thought it was a magnificent performance on selection of beanie. So that being said,
I brought three.
What's that?
I brought three.
Well, but you've recruited well those hats. That's what I'm impressed
Sure
by.
Erik and Scott had one just in case.
Oh, you're such a good boy. I'll tell you, I'm watching this game and it's getting near the end of the half. And I said, they got a shot here to put some points on. And, I've walked many sidelines. That was a complete mangled mismanagement, incompetent from the adults end of it. Forget the players. I thought maybe in my mind, which is rapidly declining, that maybe it was possible that Clay Helton was watching the game at home and was actually communicating with the press box at some level, because that's the type of mismanagement that you would sit there and say, if he was on the sideline, does he know what he's doing? But I think that this is an adult problem. The players are going to do what you tell them. You tell them to call a timeout, they're going to call a timeout. You tell them to spike it, they're going to spike it. I think the players were looking for direction and got absolutely none. And shame on them for doing it. And the reason I'm so critical of it is the coaches are getting paid six-figure salaries not to make these mistakes. And I thought it was almost, to me, a microcosm of the game and the two teams. That one team was well coached from beginning to end, and another team had mismanagement coaching. And unfortunately, in my opinion, it was our Trojans, and there is no excuse for it. The tide could have been turned somewhat, but it was just jaw-dropping mismanagement, and I'll leave it at that. I don't want to get angry about it.
I'll go my play of the game, and before I say that, just kind of honorable mention to Notre Dame's last touchdown drive, where USC gives them 30 yards in penalties. Right when you think, okay, maybe they could kind of make this late run and get back into it. They need to stop here, and you're down 8. 2 penalties, 15-yard penalties, and Notre Dame's in the end zone, just like that. But for me, the play of the game, that tip pass interception returned 79 yards. And it's kind of 2 plays of the game in one. First of all, a huge play for Notre Dame. And USC is, after that, terrible opening drive for them offensively, they're putting something together. They're moving down the field. Maybe they can tie it up and kind of get some, good feelings early on in the game. That play kind of takes it all away, and all of a sudden Notre Dame's up 10-0. Credit to Keaton Slovis, though. He ran him down, made a tackle, saved a touchdown, and holds Notre Dame to a field goal. Again, when the game kind of comes back and gets close, you're starting to think, hey, those 4 points, that might come in handy. USC then makes enough mistakes to make sure that didn't really matter in the end. But Notre Dame being able to kind of take that momentum, get up 10 early, and sort of put USC out of it for the first half and through the third quarter, really. That to me was pretty big there. Let's go third thing, moving on, and we'll go back to you, Mark. This was what you came into the game expecting to see, and it happened.
Drake London getting 10+ catches. I was surprised. I think he almost got it in the first half. I think he finished with 8. So, yeah, I mean, that's USC's offense right now. Anything that they get above Slovis to London is like putting a cherry on top of the sundae. USC's offense right now is Slovis finding London. And that's it.
Greg, go ahead. Your expectation that was met.
Well, I expected Notre Dame to make very few to little mistakes. I expected Notre Dame to be consistent through all 4 quarters, which I thought for the most part they did. I expected SC to have penalties at the worst possible time, but they did only, this sounds bad. They only had, I think, 65 yards in penalties. They were averaging some 80-some yards in penalties. So I guess that's turning, that's a positive. And I expected them not to score in the third quarter. I almost feel like if I could go to Las Vegas and say, put a bet on the third quarter, they're not going to score. Of course, you could argue that they were going to score. They just ran out of minutes on the third quarter, and they did it in the fourth, which gave them a puncher's chance to get back in it. But I think the basic things that you saw from both teams was there. If you hadn't seen them play before, I mean, it was definitely a USC thing. So those are the things that I expected to see. And I do want to touch one briefly on what you said, Erik. That interception was very critical. That interception was so critical. It was a momentum swing. I think SC was up for it, and it did take the air out of the tires. SC was never ahead. There was never any pressure on Notre Dame, not one moment. And I kind of expected that to happen, but I was afraid if it did happen, that I didn't know whether this SC team could come back and eventually get ahead.
Yeah, my expectation was that Notre Dame was going to be able to run the ball a little bit. And this was a Notre Dame team that had just put up horrific rushing numbers coming in here. But they got right a little bit against Virginia Tech and figured out, hey, I think we can just kind of push the front enough to be able to get some yards. And USC just, they don't have an answer up front defensively. I mean, there aren't a lot of answers at any level right now for USC linebackers or secondary or up front. But Notre Dame was able to go. Kyron Williams finishes 138 yards and 2 touchdowns. Notre Dame rushes for 170. This is a team that came in averaging under 100 yards a game, 97.3. And I remember that because the exact same amount that USC rushed for last year. We all talked about how bad that was. So that's what Notre Dame brought in. But yeah, the thought was, can USC stop a team that is disciplined enough to run it hard and keep running it against them? And we got another answer there tonight. Notre Dame got it done.
They're not even, when they're running against USC, they're not getting hurt up the middle. It's everything's to the outside.
Well, it's bouncing out, and yeah, USC has a tough time just setting the line, getting in and making tackles for loss. They had no tackles for loss in the first half. They're not resetting the line of scrimmage. They're getting sort of pushed. Guys aren't getting off blocks, and then there's just sort of wiggle room for backs to kind of get anywhere. And then you're getting hurt down the sideline too on quick throws to receivers, and there are just holes kind of popping up all over that defense right now. Let's go to our fourth thing, and Greg, let's start with you. This was your surprise from the game.
Well, I'll be honest with you, even though the score didn't surprise me, I was impressed at some level that USC competed for 4 quarters, and actually in the second half was physically matching Notre Dame. In fact, Notre Dame was wearing out. Problem that SC had was executing things in the red zone or making plays when it counted. It's almost like your bases loaded and nobody out, and they figured out a way not to score. It was a baseball analogy there. But they did compete for 4 quarters. I was surprised that the running game was effective. In fact, in the fourth quarter, I thought there was times when it wasn't like Ingram was having to do it all on his own. I mean, there was some, I think the touchdown, I think he kind of went off the left side there, and he kind of went in. It was, I thought, pretty well blocked and diagnosed by Ingram. This team, nothing really surprises me. We're going into the 7th game, or second half of the season. You are what you are, and that's why their record is 3-4. I mean, if they weren't Notre Dame, it could have been it could have been Oregon State, it could have been Stanford, but Notre Dame is the glamour national name, so you think it's, whoa, look what Notre Dame did. But really, as both of you have mentioned, these are issues that have been season-long issues. And we'll see what happens.
Yeah, Mark, you're surprised from this one.
Yeah, I'm going to try and tread lightly on this one. Keaton Slovis, I'm surprised of how much he continues to regress from game to game to game. It's almost like he's mentally broken. Psychologically, he's done. Greg, you were touching on it. The offensive line, I don't think they played poorly. Keaton literally has gotten to the point now where he can't keep track of 1 alligator, 2 alligator, 3 alligator, throw the ball. That's my biggest surprise is how much he's regressing. And if the team is having a hard time following him. And I say this, this is hard for me to say because we know what Keaton is capable of. And I'm just not sure he's capable of leading this team in this situation right now. And I just go back to the end of the first half. Regardless of the coaching staff not, of helping, let's remember, this is Keaton's junior year. He should be able to master that situation at that time, Helton or no Helton. So that's my biggest surprise.
And
Can I make a rebuttal?
Sure.
I'll be short about it. I couldn't disagree more with you, Mark, and I respect you. But because, and I'll tell you why. I think Keaton Slovis is a product of a deformed system.
And that's why I said, and that's why I'm saying.
Yeah. I understand that. But I don't blame Keaton Slovis. I don't blame Keaton Slovis for why SC's offense is the way it is. His offensive line, if you put Keaton Slovis on other teams that were balanced with better adult leadership, I think he would have been good. I don't know if I would say that he's as regressed as he hasn't progressed, if that makes any sense to you. I think that he's stuck in a situation where now he probably feels that Jackson Dart is right there ready to take his spot, and he's going to be the fall guy. And I will tell you this from my opinion, it's just my opinion. He shouldn't be the fall guy. The fall guy are the people that surround him, the attitude of the team, the offensive line, everything. And I think it's unfair, just my opinion, that he is put in a position of having to take the brunt of it all. That's just how I see it.
Well, that's unfortunately, when you're the quarterback, you will take the brunt of it all. But again, it's not so much on Keaton as much as I'm just pointing out he's not capable of leading this team right now. For whatever the reasons, we can come up with a coaching scheme, yada, yada, yada. Taking too many hits, yada, yada, yada. Right now, Keaton is not in a position to lead this team. And I don't say that to be mean or say replace him. I'm just surprised that it's in his head that much right now.
Yeah, in terms of this being kind of a results-based business, right? Like when the results are what they are, at this point in the season, I think that's kind of what you're saying more, when this kind of stuff happens, it's going to look at the quarterback, and it feels like, on the first play of the game, is he holding it too long? On the third play of the game, is there pressure up and it's flushing him? It's not fluent. It's not fluid. I think a lot of it where when you have this many games under your belt, and this is Keaton, this is the offensive line now, this is the offensive coordinator. I think that's what we're all saying. When it's not, when you're not clearly not speaking the same language to where you're going out and it's, hey, we know we can do this and we're going to do this really well. At this point, like we've all said, what they can do, what they feel like they can do really well is, hey, throw it over there to 15 and let him try to make a play, and that's something where there doesn't feel like a plan B. It doesn't feel like Keaton can go out and say, no, I got this. I'll find something. I'll make it work. And I think that's kind of what everyone's trying to get to from different ways there. But yeah, at the end of the day, he's taken every single snap from behind, not under, from behind center in this game. And so the spotlight's on him. And that's what comes from being the quarterback at this point.
USC,
yeah, and my surprise here is that they ran it really well. I mean, that's always a surprise for me when they run it really well. I think you can go into every SC game figuring they're probably not going to run it that well. So when they do it, it's nice. And I'm glad Keontae got in the end zone. I think he deserved it. Darrell Barlow too. Keontae Ingram ran really hard. I mean, he ran hard. He ran well. He averaged almost 6 yards a carry. Again, when Notre Dame can kind of look at him and maybe focus on him a little bit, but a good game for him. And boy, it's one of those things. And I'm going to get to this with my takeaway. So I'll go ahead and kick off going into our fifth thing. But my biggest takeaway from this is talking to the players and talking to Graham Harrell specifically after the game. And they're talking about, boy, we got to figure out why we can't get it in the red zone. And we're getting a bunch of yards and the yardage totals look good and we're moving the ball and we just have to figure it out. And my thought is kind of, I think you're doing really well with what you're setting out to do. You're setting out to move the ball between the 20s and pile up yards, but you're not setting out to physically get it into the end zone inside the red zone. And that's not something that you've set out to do. So trying to find answers for it and figure things out week to week by doing the same things. My takeaway is it's not coming. It's not the red zone touchdown success. All of a sudden, yeah, we're scoring touchdowns all over the place here by doing what you've been doing for the whole season. I just don't see that coming. And so that the takeaway being, we're going to look for answers. We're going to try to fix our mistakes, and we're going to try to do that. If you do it the same way you've been trying to do it, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen in these games because the schedule, it's not a tough schedule. And we talked about this before the season, and it certainly hasn't looked tougher as the year has gone along. But boy, those last games still feel a little bit loaded with Arizona State back there and UCLA back there and BYU back there. So you've got a challenge, and trying to go to the same place to find the answers you've been looking for all season is going to be, I think it's going to be a struggle for them going forward. Greg, go ahead. Your fifth thing here, your biggest takeaway from the game.
Well, first, I would just like to think I think you came up with the right idea. I think the field is too long. I think we need to take out both 10 yards for the end zones. We need to take out the goal line to 20 yards on each side and make it a 60-yard field. I think if they did that, they probably average 40 points a game, maybe more. But we know that's not going to happen. So when you ask me what my takeaways are, I like that they competed. I like that they hit. They should know that they can do it. It's all in their mind. If they're really into it, they can compete. And like you said, the tougher part of the schedule, I always thought was the at Arizona State, UCLA, and BYU. BYU will be a tough game too. And if they can compete all four quarters physically, they might be able to. And I know this sounds bad. They might be able to go to a bowl game, because I think that they're, other than Arizona, and I'm starting to get a little nervous about Arizona because they seem to be the little train that could, and they stay in the game a little bit and then they peter out. And, that's probably a good thing for SC. They're going to play a homecoming game. You don't schedule someone for homecoming if you think they're, you don't schedule Ohio State for your homecoming, but so Arizona is the expected guinea pig. So I think if they can take it to Arizona, forget that it's Arizona, just play hard, do what you did. And, they just need a win. They need a win. If it's against Arizona, so be it, because they're going to get theirs the following week when they go to Tempe and Arizona State and the balance of the schedule. And I'll tell you what, Cal will be tough. Cal will be tough up in Berkeley too. They'll be, they're not having a great season, but, they'll make their season if we can beat SC. So takeaway for me, they competed. And that's important for this team right now.
Mark, go ahead. Your biggest takeaway from this one.
I'll agree with Greg. They did compete. The players. Dramatic pause. I don't know if the coaches competed. And I'm going to go back to their bye week, where some coaches decided they needed to go recruit, which is always a good thing. But at the same time, if you're focusing on the younger players having a scrimmage, maybe some coaches should stick around and watch those younger players. The line that I think really bothered me the most, and this game bothered me, but when we sat down and listened to Dante give his post-game press conference, he pulled a Mike Bellotti when he said, "We didn't lose this game, we just ran out of time." So, while yes, Greg, they did compete.
I'm not laughing at you.
I know what you're laughing at.
I'm thinking of the Bellotti quote.
You know exactly what I'm referring to.
I'm glad I wasn't in that press conference
So,
per se.
That's my takeaway, is that I have a feeling, and it's just my own gut feeling, that Dante is losing the team quickly.
It's tough. This season's been tough. It's tough to keep them when you've got so much turmoil so early. That was, I mean, this is starting a road trip across
31
the
to
states
16.
and having a flat tire out of your driveway and still, trying to make it.
You lose 31 to 16. You didn't run out of time. I'm sorry. You got
Well, that's been kind of, would you not agree, guys, that that's kind of the theme, that they get down by a lot and then they make this furious rally in the fourth quarter, and it's like we just ran out of time. They didn't run out of time. I will tell you that they didn't run out of time.
Ran out of time management.
Yeah, well, time management is a whole different animal. But I agree that was a ludicrous statement. It doesn't serve him any purpose. Look, he is fish out of water. He doesn't know the offense. He was put in an incredible situation. He's like trying to pour 10. I'll clean this up. 10 tons of sand in a 2-pound bag. Okay, you can figure out where I'm going at, but that it's and the players are maybe the players, if the players really get down on him. Players are the players. They're going to point the finger. I think they should point the finger at themselves first. But I think what we're seeing, especially by what happened at the end of the first half, those fingers also have to be pointed to the coaching staff. I'm sorry. I mean, I've said it before. So, it's unfortunate. But, in one respect, I will say this because I know I'm starting to talk too much, but those coaches now are in a bad situation. I was talking with Kevin Bruce this last week, our WeAreSC and former all-everything linebacker on national championship teams. And he said when Coach McKay left his senior year, when McKay made the announcement that he was leaving, he says the whole team deflated. They went up to Cal and got reamed by a good Cal team with Chuck Muncie and Joe Roth. And he said, but we were never the same until the bowl game because it was like all the coaches were wondering, where are they going? Okay, so they go out and they're recruiting, but how much can their heart be in it? They don't even know if they're going to be with SC. Probably, honestly speaking, probably not, most of them. So they're they've got issues going on too. I understand that.
And I think that's why, you can give a lot of credit to the players because they do keep showing up, and there's mistakes and there's scheme issues and all of that, but they're playing, and I think that's all they can do. And this has been an unbelievably emotional year. You lose your coach, and it's not even the connection to Clay, although a lot of the players did have a huge connection to him. But it's the feeling of we failed him. It was our fault that he got fired, and we feel like that. And that has been, now you've got Dante Williams come in, and it's, hey, we can get Dante the job if we do well, and then that kind of falls away pretty quickly. And now, okay, have we failed another coach? And so there's just so much emotionally piled on these guys for them to come out and kind of regroup themselves and try to get back into this thing. I think there are kind of some kudos to give to them. And you just hope, you look forward and you've got Arizona there. You hope it's kind of a soft landing spot for them to be able to get a win and maybe get some momentum going at the, later games of the season. But we will see how that plays out. For now, that's going to be our look back, and I'm sure this week we've got a lot more to say about this one and everything going forward. But that's our look back at USC dropping a 31-16 decision to big-time rival Notre Dame in South Bend. So for Marc Kulkin, for Greg Katz, this is Erik McKinney. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. WeAreSC.